Hi everyone, ShinyKey here with Crevian, and today I'm going to be going over how to implement the ProHUD pack into the ACF Ultimate. I'm sitting here on a blank ACF Ultimate project on version 3.5. You can start from wherever. This is just where I'm going to start, so you don't see anything extra on the screen. So, first step is to obviously acquire one of the ProHUD packs. I'm using the horror version. The steps are identical if you have any of the other packs. He does a really good job of making sure that all of his HUD packs are consistent. And as I actually found out in testing to make this video, you could actually run multiple of his HUD packs because the naming is actually different enough that it doesn't conflict with itself. So that's kind of cool as well. So acquire one of the ProHUD packs. I'm going to use the horror version of this instance. The nodes will be named a little bit different. I'll explain that a little bit when we get to that step. It's not a big deal though. So first thing we're going to want to do is obviously add that to the project. I'm going to add that to my Ultimate Tutorial series, and I'm going to add to project. All right. Now that we have that in place here, there are a few steps we want to do. So if you recall, or if you've actually watched any of the official tutorials here, we want to avoid changing things in the full sample and the integrations, because if there's an update or if they change something, your work is going to be overwritten. So when possible, we need to be making child of, and when we can't make a child of, we need to copy them. So I'm going to do that real quick to set everything up to kind of show what we're going to want to do with that. I'm going to start by making a folder, and I'm just going to call this tutorial. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to find the game mode here, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy the game mode. And I'm going to rename that to tutorial game mode. And then I'm going to set that as our active game mode. I'm going to save that. All right, next step for the HUD specifically now, we need to come over here, and we already have this ACF Ultimate HUD here. That will be fine, but we are going to want to put something in the middle here. So I'm going to copy this HUD over. And of course, I just did a move there. Don't do that. Copy it. Do not move it. I'm going to put that back in integrations. And update the... Okay. Try that again. We're going to copy. Copy, copy, copy. Always copy. All right. And I'm going to rename this to Tutorial Ultimate HUD. And before we go any further, I'm going to make sure that my Tutorial Ultimate HUD is the current HUD class that we are going to be using. And we're going to go ahead and open that up. Pull that over to my main screen so you can see that. So this is since we copied it, this is going to be the same HUD as what is within Ultimate. The thing we need to note here is the HUD class. This is the actual widget that will be actually be pulled up. We'll actually get this opened as well in a moment here because we're going to be doing a few tweaks in there as well. So what we need to do to actually start getting this working, though, is we need to incorporate the ProHUD pack. So if I come over here into Blueprints, you can see that the ProHUD has its own version of the HUD. Now, just a little side note on this. It hasn't worked well for me to copy this over. If you want to use it out of the box, you really don't want to touch this. Leave it the same name, and everything like that, like I'm going to be doing in the video. You can recreate this. As you can see, you're going to have to essentially copy over all these functions yourself, keeping in mind that there are a lot of hard references to this ProHUDv2, the exact name. There's a lot of casting with that going on in place. So just keep in mind, if you decide to copy this over, mileage may vary until you go in and make some manual fixes. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to use this right here. And all we're going to do is we're going to reparent this. So if we come over to the tutorial HUD that we just made, you can see that the parent of this is ACF HUD. We want to do the same thing for that. So in the Pro HUD, I want to go to File, and I want to reparent this. I want to reparent this to ACF HUD so that now my Pro HUD makes use of the ACF HUD, and we can make use of all the function calls that ACF provides us. Now over in my tutorial HUD, I need to reparent this once more. So I'm going to reparent this, and this time we're going to reparent this to the ProHUDv2 _H. Another side note here, this is the minor difference depending upon which pack you have. The horror version of this pack is called _H. The other version of this pack is just ProHUDv2. It doesn't have the _H. You've all probably figured that out by now, but just in case you're kind of wondering like why the naming convention is a little different, that's why. And that's also what allows you to have both packs in the same project. If you're testing it out, trying to see which one works, you don't have to worry about naming conflicts. You just have to keep in mind the pointers of it. All right, so we're going to compile and save that. And now you can see that we have our little HUD here is parented to this ProHUDv2, which is right here, which is parented to the ACF HUD. The other thing to check in our tutorial HUD, make sure this HUD class here is still set. For me, it still was. It kept the settings when I reparented it, but make sure you still have that there. And we're going to come in here and we're going to hit play. And believe it or not, we're actually done with integrating the HUD into the project. There's a few more things we're going to want to do. You saw a few error messages pop up in the top left of the screen there. That's actually a good sign that's showing that the HUD is working and loading correctly. You'll also know that we still have the HUD elements from the actual Ultimate project, so that portion of it is working as well. So let's get into how are we actually going to make use of this. First, let me show you where those debug messages are in case you don't care about those debug messages. If you come over to your ProHUD, the folder, go into your widgets, you'll find this WB ProHUDv2, which is right here. And if I just click on this HUD widget right here, you'll see a message on the right hand that says Get Debug Messages. We're going to turn that off. Those debug messages, this particular pack includes a mini map and a full map in it. Those are warning you that it could not find the blueprints to make those two functions work. They can be ignored, especially if you are not going to be using the mini map or the full map and are going to use ACF's map functionality instead. Or you do want to use it, but you're going to play with it down the road. Entirely up to you. One note on this window before we kind of move on here. So this is the WB ProHUDv2 here. If you want to edit any of this, you want to change like where something is on the screen, which I did in my project. I moved a few things around here just that I thought laid out a little bit better. You're actually going to click this HUD in the top right. You're going to see WB HUD container. The HUD container is where you would do all that stuff. So for example, in my project, I actually moved the options notify a little bit closer to center of screen. This is where you would do stuff like that if you want to adjust or move where something is on the screen. Okay, let's go over some examples now of how you're going to make use of these functions. So we're going to do a couple things here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the character here. If I actually know how to navigate this. They are using the Ultimate Player _UE4. Again, copy, make children of. I'm going to edit these directly. This is a tutorial project, so I'm not really concerned if I have to recreate the project or anything like that. But in your cases, you should be copying making children of. Don't edit these classes directly here. But I'm going to go ahead and open up the UE4 just to kind of demonstrate what's going on. So these are nodes that are already here. These are just kind of how they did the UE4 retargeting here. So we're not going to worry about this right now. To make use of the HUD, we can actually do it in 2 different ways, and I'll show you how to use it from the player character, and I'll show you kind of how I'm using it in my project. Neither way is right or wrong. It really kind of depends upon how you want to organize things and what makes the most sense in your mind. All of ProHUDs, doesn't matter if you have the horror or the non-horror like that, all of them will be accessed by a interface called HUD Manager. And we're going to get that by, as you would expect, get HUD Manager right here. From HUD Manager, this is how you're going to call all of the HUD effects that you can have. So, for example, if we wanted to add the compass, search for compass, and we have a show compass option. If I hook that up there and compile and save this, we should see, if I hit play here, a compass. You can kind of see it up there a little bit. It's being covered by the compass that comes included in the project, but you can see we have our compass in place. Now, let's go over kind of how I am handling these function calls in my project. My project is going to be a multiplayer project, and there are a few, at least at the time of recording this video, there are a few gotchas with multiplayer here. For example, just to show, I'm running in a standalone right now, okay? If I come over to the pickup here, you can see that I can pick things up, right? Great. But if I set my game to play as client, then I try to do that over here, nothing happens. So there are a few things we need to change with the UI. Not really change, but there's a few considerations we have to make when we're doing the UI for multiplayer. So let me go over that with you now. I chose to have everything UI related in my UI blueprint. So we're going to open up Ultimate HUD. Again, I have a copy of this. I've copied this over and I've changed and edited what I wanted, what I didn't want, that stuff. You should be copying this as well. Make your own class for this and set it up. And you know what? Just so we're showing the right way to do things here, we're actually going to do that. We're going to close this out here. I'm going to take this WBP Ultimate HUD right here. You can find that in the integrations folder. And I'm going to move that over to tutorial. And I'm going to copy that here. And I'm going to rename this to, rather, I'm just going to add tutorial so we can kind of see the difference between the two. I'm going to open this. Now, once you do that, don't forget you need to come back over to your HUD class, whatever set in your game mode right here, in your HUD class. You need to come over and tell it to make use of that new blueprint. So in that case, for me, it's WBP Tutorial Ultimate HUD. That will pull the information from this right here now. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, just for now, I'm going to hide this compass. Just so it's a little bit easier when we're doing the compass. Okay. So, kind of the gotcha that we want to explain here in this HUD. If I come over to the pickup notifications WB, and I edit this notification list to see how this is going to work. If we come into the bind events here, right here, we'll see that the way this works is we're binding an event to OnItemAdded. This works fine in single player. At the time of the recording of this video, this does not work in multiplayer because the way Pask has it set up is OnItemAdded is actually called on the server. and the client just doesn't get that event call at all. Since widgets are not a not replicated class, we also cannot just replicate the client in this class. So how do we fix that? It's actually really easy. The way I decided to do it was I actually made an interface for this to make it a little bit easier and make it so I don't have to constantly cast and figure out where in the world I am for this. So I'm going to show you that one. I will mention how to do it the other way if you don't really want to do an interface, but interfaces are really easy, and they're gonna save your life a lot of times. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new interface. I'm gonna call this tutorial, if I can spell, tutorial HUD API. Let me open this up. Okay, so for our first function, we're actually going to just do the OnItemAdded function. I'll leave it up to you to implement the other ones. I will mention how to do kind of the other ones, but the process is the same once you get this down. So I'm going to name this function. I rename it. I'm going to name this HUD OnItemAdded, just so we know that this is the HUD variant of it. And we need an input. We need an input for the item that was added. Now, we can come over here. If you're not sure what the input is, you can actually just come over here and highlight and see, okay, what is this one? It's a base item structure, okay? So we need to search for base item, and we want a base item. And we're going to compile. We're going to save that. Okay. Next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make that do something. So if I come back over to my tutorial HUD WP, this is your main one here. I'm doing the way they have it is a little bit different because it's using a child HUD. In my particular project, this is all just happening on the screen, and you know what? Actually, we're gonna do that. We're gonna ignore this widget blueprint right here. I think that's actually going to be a little bit better in the long run. We'll do it the way I have it set up. So we're going to come over to class settings here. Just click class settings. I'm going to scroll down until we find interfaces, implemented interfaces. Currently we have nothing, but we're going to want to add an interface. And we're going to want to add the interface that we just created, tutorial HUD API, right there. And now you'll notice if I come over in the top left to interfaces, I have this HUD OnItemAdded. Beautiful. Okay, so what do we do with this now? Well, I'll pull up my notes here so I can walk you through this. It's actually pretty straightforward. So off of OnItemAdded, we're going to want to break that base item to get a little bit more information out of it. From there, if I pull off of the item class here, I would like to get the item data. We'll hook that up. Move this down a little bit more so you can see. All right, and from this, we're going to do a branch because we want to only do this if we actually successfully grab the item data. We don't want to move on if we didn't. If we did, though, we're going to break the item descriptor out. And I'm going to leave this here just for now until we get the, believe it or not, final node of HUD Manager, HUD Manager H. And I'm going to add a pickup notification. And I'm going to copy this over. Now, in my testing, something that came up that I didn't realize is I was having this bug where this was only firing once, okay? This is actually not a bug, as I found out. This node, by default, what it will do is it will queue the items you picked up. So if you pick up multiple items in a row, it will kind of add them and kind of like cycle through all the items you picked up, right? This will only work if this tag is unique. If you leave this tag blank, and you pick up 5 items, you will only see a notification for 1 item. you need to make sure that you set a unique tag. Luckily, we have a unique tag in the form of item GUID. So we're going to pull item GUID, and of course, it's not going to let me because, you know, it's too hard for Unreal Engine to understand what I want to do. So I'm going to pull off of item GUID instead, and I'm going to type in toString GUID, and then I'm going to hook that up to my tag. This will get the item ID and set it here. That way you're not going to have that kind of issue. From the pickup notification, I'm going to pull off and I'm going to type make pickup notification. For display time, I'm going to do 3 seconds. Sounds fine by me. Under item info, I'm going to make item info. Pull this out so we get a little bit more room here. And from the thumbnail, you're going to see we're going to drag the thumbnail into the icon texture. And we're going to take the name and we're going to put the name. We're actually going to make a format text here. And I'm going to do the format that I have is name space X count. Name is going to go into name. And then just to make this a little bit cleaner, I'm going to hide my unconnected pins. And count, we're going to get from the original base item that we made. I'm going to plug that into count. And then that is going to be the text that we display. Just like that. You can mess with these other ones. Icon state is, you can actually set a, in the HUD, you can set kind of just like pre-configured icons if you want. And then you can call it from there rather than having to pull in an icon. Text info, I'll let you play around with that on your own. I just pull this out. Text info lets you set the font, the color, the scale if you want it to be a little bit bigger on it. Leaving it blank is fine. It will just accept the defaults on it. But I'll let you kind of play with that when you kind of get into how you want to do it. So, okay, so this is the OnItemAdded function now, but we need a way to call this. So how are we going to get this function to run? Come back over into our player character right here. And what we are going to do, let me get my notes together here. Here we go. So we need to essentially mimic that, that bind event that we saw before. Now, we could do a bind event in the player character. It's also just as easy to come over to our left-hand side, go to Equipment and Inventory component, add event, and then we're going to add an OnItemAdded call. Now, remember, this is a server only. So if you are doing a single-player game, don't need to make this second function. If you're making a multiplayer section, keep paying attention here. We're going to make another custom event called client OnItemAdded. Just like that. And just as kind of a side note, if you are making a single player game, you can still follow these steps. This will still work in single player. If you want to make it multiplayer in mind, so if you change your mind on the road, I'll leave that up to all of you. But we're going to come into our OnClientAdded, and we're going to say we want to run this on the owning client. All this is going to do now is this is going to say client OnItemAdded. So we're just calling this function down here. And I actually had to hook up item here, which we'll handle that in a minute. From here, we're going to get the ACF HUD. Because remember, our tutorial HUD is a child of ACF HUD, so this will work. And this is one of the reasons why we still want to child the ACF HUD. That way we can use this nice little helper node. I'm going to pull off an isValid node on this, just to make sure that we have the HUD here. And then I'm off of here. I'm going to pull off of the get HUD widget. Because get ACF HUD is just going to get you this HUD class. but we actually want the specific widget that this function is in. So your main widget that it's calling to set everything up. So we want the widget, the HUD widget here. Off of HUD widget, I won't go into how interfaces work completely here, but we're going to send a message, and I'll explain kind of how this is hooking up once I get this in here. So we have this HUD OnItemAdded, if you remember from our PPI, and we have that there. And if you remember, we have event OnItemAdded here. So the way the interfaces work is this is calling if this HUD widget implements an interface that is using the tutorial HUD interface, it will call this function. Okay, so we're sending a message to this class saying, if you implement this, please run this function. And what would you know? We are implementing that interface, and we actually are doing something on that call. This prevents you from having to do a lot of casting and trying to figure out who's who and where's it. My opinion, it's a lot easier. Interfaces aren't to be used all the time. Like, as with anything in your game, you still need to make sure that you're doing what's right for you and you're doing what makes sense. This made the most sense for me. Just keeping everything inside of HUD, and anything that's HUD related, keeping inside HUD related. I digress though. Okay, we're gonna compile and save that. I'm going to pull the item into this client added, and then I'm also gonna make sure that I hook it back up to the original function here. Now, if I play as a client, actually, let's do standalone because it's actually kind of fun to see this one. So if I hit play on standalone, you can see, here you go. On the right-hand side, I'm getting a bunch of items, and you can also see that queuing function working. So you see I picked up more than 3 items, and it's kept a queue of the items I've picked, and it's just going through them until we're done. Unfortunately, you won't get the same kind of look if you play as client. Unfortunately, you don't get any brand new fancy UI. It's just added and replicated it to you. But it does work in multiplayer that I'll show you here. So if I walk over here and I pick it up, there it goes. I don't know what that first one was. You can see it picks up. And there we go. It is calling on the client as well. So, just kind of a recap of what we did here. We have our own HUD here, parented under HUD, parented under ACF. We are calling the functions, at least in this particular example, we're calling the functions inside of the player character that kind of translates, if you will, to the HUD. And any HUD related stuff, at least what I've done in my projects and the way we set up here, all the HUD related actions happen inside of this HUD. Okay, using this this interface call and replicate it to work in multiplayer. So that is how you implement the ProHUDv2 into ACF, and make sure that it's actually working in multiplayer. If you are watching the future and they have added an OnItemAdded client, there was a little bit of talk that something like that would have. These steps won't be necessary anymore. You would just use the OnItemAdded client at that point. Until that happens, though, you will need to make sure that all these functions are happening on the client side of things. So, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Discord. Same name, Shinekey in Discord. Comment down below. I try to read those and I try to go through those as well. Yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know.